first of all, good evening. It's a long good evening, and it has been a phenomenal experience. Going through sitting this in the morning to the evening session. I never thought, I call this the kind of an icebreaker day where we are sitting, the scientists making pitch, and the VC guys are sitting for a long time. So I think this is a very good step in the right direction. And so our session is following that, and I'm sure you guys must have been thinking about you've gone through some of these presentations, and how about we first we go with a very brief introduction to the panel members. I see at least 4 of them are here, the 5 are here, very quickly, and then we could go to the task that we have been asked to take care of this session. So I think we have Taslim Arif. Taslim, good evening. I know Taslim for a long time, and and so basically, Taslim is leading the C camp for almost more than 10-15 years. In Bangalore, and Dr. Premnath, the Venture Center from NCL. I would call these two, these two kind of, they are the champions of, I would say, some of the two leading incubation centers in the country. So congratulations, you have a very long innings. I'm sure we're going to look forward to some of the experiences that you have, gone through over the more than 10 years. And then I see also we had a fantastic talk by Mr. Sanjeev in the morning. Thank you very much. Your presentation was outstanding. You gave a very good picture, how we have taken the short steps, and now you're basically challenging us, how do we go to the next level? And so thank you very much for being on this panel. And I also see Dr. K.K.Narayanan. I think you are having problems with the connection, so you're back here. And the beauty of this panel is, I must mention that Taslim is coming from the neuro background. He's PhD in neurobiologist, a good science background. Dr. Premnath is a much polymer scientist background, and Dr. K.K.Narayanan is from the agriculture background, heading into the agri-genome and the seed company. And not the least, we have Mr. Uday Chatterjee. We are just beginning to know each other. We have not met yet, and Mr. Chatterjee also, he has a very sort of a unique background, not from the science, but he's from the management, the finance background. And I call Mr. Uday is really one of the stalwarts in mentoring, in the biotechs in the system, one of the backbones of Indian Angel Networks. And to all the youngsters who are really looking for reaching out to Indian Angel Network, I would strongly recommend and suggest maybe, reach out to Mr. Chatterjee, and you will find speaking with him and listening to him quite useful. Okay, so I think what we will do very quickly is, basically, we have gone through this whole day's session, and I thought, I'm going to ask the panel members. We will ask one by one, and most of you, you're long in the game, 10-15 years in the game, so you really know, now India has taken, as we heard this morning, India has taken the step 1. How do we really go to the next level? So the question I'm going to ask to, let's say, Mr. We start with the Taslim. Tell us that we have taken the step 1, and you have seen enough over the last more than 10 years. And please share your experiences that, how do we take, in the context of team building, how do we take some of these, very youngsters, the young startups, and if you want to prepare them to go to the next level, would you be able to share some of your experiences you have in depth, and then we'll go to Premnath and then to other folks. Taslim, please.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhat. Thanks for the invite, and wonderful to be here. I think this is a very pertinent discussion, to be honest with you. It's like a discussion when we are looking as an ecosystem, when we are around the early stage, some of the good things are happening, but possibly we should be also very carefully looking at it, that what could be done more and much more important, and not look at the trajectory change of 10 degrees, but it should be trajectory change of 45 degrees. So why 35 degree didn't happen? It's a very important actually view to look at, and something that we possibly need to do together is to look at the trajectory change from a perspective of deep science component of it. I think while the larger picture of entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem is building up very, very well, and I think we are very, very excited, and particularly so in CCAM, the last quarter has been really very good. Yesterday, 2 days back or 48 hours ago, another of our company in Agri announced $18.5 million raise, that is C6 Energy. And a month back, another of our company, String Bio in synthetic biology, raised $20 million. And one of the other company, iStem, raised $7 million. And this has happened right in last 2 months or 45 days. This is absolutely amazing in terms of outcomes of the early picks that we have been able to do in deep science, and help them nurture and handhold them whatever we could do through the journey of last 6 to 7 years. This hasn't happened overnight. These seeds were sown 6, 7, 8 years back, and slowly and steadily now they are strong enough, they are meaty enough that the investors are coming in and building it and investing them into the next level. That's very, very exciting. And something that we need to do more, and as I've been saying, is that to possibly our ability to take more bets, and not necessarily about numbers, but more bets, more science bets, if I may argue about it a little bit more, and see how we can pick the best ideas and take our best bets to work, make them work later on. So it's a two-stage process. Picking the best, that involves attracting the best, making them convinced that you are the good partner for them, like CCAM would like to make them believe they are a good partner. And then second stage, after investing in them and support, then handhold them for the journey in terms of early proof of concept, scale up, collaboration with technical experts, collaboration with business experts, collaboration with industry, and so on. I think that has been very, very important thing. And this is some of the components you use, Prabhat, was bringing them the best expertise in terms of team building, right? Getting them the experts, the science leaders, getting them the market leaders who can be a part of those teams and drive the mandate of it forward. And that's where you have to be, in a way, what we attempt to be is kind of an ecosystem where you land, and anything you need, we're trying to connect, because we happen to have, in a way, a fortunate positioning of being close to academia, close to industry, close to government. And that is very important thing, that we can stitch things together and make it happen. But one thing, if I may sign off on this part of it, for say that very important thing we need to do from 10 degrees to more 35 degrees is scientific bets that we have to take. And collectively, I think this group understands it more, but we have to make it a bit more vocal altogether, and not necessarily say that something, only invest in something that looks visible today. It may look completely outlandish. It may look completely like landing on Mars now, but still, do we have a belief that the craft will go there? It may fail, but let's attempt to do that. And I think that trajectory collectively we have to do and build it to the next level. I'll stop here for now, and hopefully able to come in next again.
So good, Taslim. I think you touched upon some very important points. How do we go to the next level, not be afraid of failing? How do we prepare ourselves? So I think I'll take it to Mr. Premnath now, because I've been following NCL for a long time, for a good amount of time, and NCL always has been an iconic place, whether NCL Institute or the Incubation Center or the Venture Center, and a lot of hopes in this country from this part of the world. So, Mr. Premnath, would you, like, how do we, how do you see yourself? Because you have been stalwart in this game for several years, and you guys have done phenomenal. In your experience dealing with these entrepreneurs, what you would like them to go, what you would like them to do things differently, what they're currently doing, and partnering with academics, the business world. Could you just share some of your thoughts and maybe your experiences with the ongoing experiences that you might want to share?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Arya. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Please.
great. So first of all, thank you for inviting me, and thanks for this opportunity. It's good to be in this forum, and it's good to talk about synergies between which we can explore between different parts of the innovation ecosystem. Um, Thank you also for the warm introduction to Venture Center and NCL itself. So we have been work. So as you might be aware, the Venture Center is focused on inventive enterprises and deep tech enterprises. And we are basically trying to put together an ecosystem that is conducive for innovators, for entrepreneurs, and various other stakeholders to participate and build something of value together. Now, when we do this, clearly one of our very important goals is to try and build a rich and complete or as complete as possible and diverse ecosystem, right? And that's quite important when you're building startups, especially in such domains as where a lot more knowledge intensity is there, a lot more inventive ideas are coming up because the demands on the ecosystem are a lot higher, right? It's not necessary that we may not be able to say take up a flat somewhere with 2 computers and start a new business, right? That's not feasible in many of the domains that we operate in. So we need to think a little bigger, little more, take a larger view of the ecosystem and build it out. So over the years, so Venture Center has been there for more than 15 years now. And we have been trying to build that ecosystem out, especially close gaps in a few areas, which we have chosen as areas where we think we can make a dent. But of course, we are sector agnostic and we look at anything where there is knowledge intensity. That said, there are some domains which are of greater interest to entrepreneurs, greater interest to the ecosystem at any given time, and we have been trying to build that out over a period of time. As Tasleem said, it's important to bet on ideas, right? And I agree with him entirely. And you will also notice that you're able to bet on ideas a little more confidently when you know that the carpet will not be pulled out from under you, right? And that part of the carpet is also your ecosystem, right? You don't
Sure.
want to have gaps. You don't want to have uncertainties. You want to have predictability at least around you, so that at least whatever risk you're managing as an entrepreneur is within the business and not necessarily outside of it, right? So the idea is to try and fill up those gaps, make it a little more certain, and so on. So let me give you an example. So in the medtech space, for example, Venture Center has been working on trying to close the gaps from proof of concept to advanced prototyping, to an ISO 13485 certified clean room, to regulatory support, regulatory and information and facilitation support in-house, okay, including right up till clinical trial stage, connects with clinical trial partners and so on and so forth. So we have tried to close that gap, and at the same time, you need to identify funding pockets at different stages, which you are able to bring in. At the same time, you also are, I mean, it's quite obvious that you need to understand markets, you need to understand industry. And clearly mentors who have done it before, who have participated in this whole activity are very important. And industry players also become important in that context, because they have a better feel for the nuts and bolts of the industry. Although I'm a big believer in the fact that new startups with daring ideas very often are willing to look at those daring ideas which may look small today for big companies, but are going to become big tomorrow and maybe even disrupt those big companies, right? That is something which we have to keep in mind, but at the same time, explore some of those synergies as we go around. It has also taken us a long time to get there in terms of showing results. We work in many domains which have regulations, regulated products are there, domains which have longer time scales, domains which require systematic scientific progression of an idea, de-risking, validation, proof of value, and so on and so forth, which takes time, right? But in the recent years, for example, we are showing really outstanding results. I mean, last 7 years, our companies have raised more than 550 crores in this capital. And also, interestingly, there are companies which are showing tremendous sales. So the sales numbers are at almost 1,300 crores for the last 7 years, which is absolutely surprising for us, because we work with early stage startups, and we didn't, and especially knowledge intensive ones, and we don't expect that there will be sales revenue at that stage. But it's interesting to see that. And also, I think the times are changing. There's a lot more interest in deep tech, and also there's a reception for taking risk as well. So I think we are at the right time, at the right place, and I'm quite confident that startups will have a very important role in shaping how the biotech industry in India grows over the next decade, for sure. And what happened in the 1970s with pharma industry is, I think, going to happen in India today with the biomed devices and diagnostics industry, probably starting with diagnostics and heading to for a lot more in devices as well. In 70s, we were 80% importers of pharma products, and today we are selling every third drug product is from India in the world. And I think that similar kind of action might happen also in the diagnostics and devices. But that said, also agro, in the context of climate action, is going to see a lot of churn, and that's a big opportunity for biotech industry, in my opinion. Climate action is going to place climate related challenges are going to place immense technical challenges, and that means there's scope for innovation, and that means there's scope for entrepreneurship in those domains as well. And as you're seeing, even in the industrial biotech space also, a lot of developments are happening. So we are in interesting times, and I think it's important to leverage those synergies between different players, startups, large companies, and so on, and build a very synergistic innovation ecosystem at different places, at different levels, and interacting with different clusters as well. So I'll stop here. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Good. And I think, listening to both of you, because a lot of eyes are in these two incubation centers, and I'm hoping that, the upcoming incubation centers, they are sort of in touch with you, and you can also kind of, mentor because there is so much activity going on in this domain. So thank you very much to both of you. And maybe I'll switch my attention to Dr. Narayanan. I've gone through very briefly on the LinkedIn, and you have a stellar record in this the domain on the business and connecting more on the maybe agriculture side or agri-genomics and on the seed business. I think we want to benefit from your experience, which you have sort of acquired over the years, and what kind of message you would like to give to the younger folks to think different, take bold steps, not to be afraid of failing, or something like what you want to convey to our younger audience.
Good. Thank you. I think Taslim touched upon the ambience that's required to promote enterprise and entrepreneurship. My previous panelists mentioned about leveraging synergies to promote innovation. I think I came from the academic background for about the first 10 years of my life after my postdoc was as an academic, and then ventured into starting a company. I think the first one took about 15 years to go through the whole cycle of founding and then exiting. We were lucky to exit quite well. The second company cycle was about 5 years. After that, it was a food tech company. The first one was an agriculture technology company. So I have seen it, and now I am also an investor. So in some of the enterprises, some things which I myself have started now. So I can say that I am one of the privileged guys who have seen both sides, from the side of the founder promoter and from the perspective of the investor. And I'm sure in this audience, there are many people who have pitched and who are founders and are looking for capital to push their enterprise into the next level. And I am sure there are also many potential investors who are willing to provide that capital. So I will take the next 3-4 minutes to actually share some of my personal insights into how you can build a synergies between the investee and the investor, and some of the thinking that needs to go into it. Firstly, I think as a promoter, you will always be short of funds. You will be looking for funds because you have ideas which are running ahead of you. And there are critical times when fund infusion can actually make or break the enterprise. So it's very important that you seek funding and funding from those people who have a mandate to invest in your areas. There are VC funds which have specific mandate. They may be IT or medical devices or agri. So make sure that's the first thing to look at. But once you start talking, I think always the talk should be focused on what I call as the enterprise first. There will be individual interests. Founders and promoters will look at things from their perspective. The venture funds who are investing in the company will look at things a little differently. Of course, we all should recognize that while science and the innovation passion is what drives, or at least what initially drives the promoters to start the enterprise, the investor is also looking at a return on the investment. So there are potential for conflicts in this conflicts of interest. But I think one thing to keep in mind is always partner with an investor who actually thinks about what I call as the enterprise first. So as long as you can certainly have differences between members of the promoter group or between the promoter group and the investor, but as long as everybody is aligned in one aspect, that is, the interest of the enterprise comes above the interest of the individuals, I think most of these things can be sorted out in the interest of the enterprise. Because I think your growth and your returns essentially depends on the growth of the enterprise, both in value terms as well as in scale and profitability terms. Now, it's very important to, as you go along, manage the expectations. I think as a promoter, we will sometimes use what I want to call forward-looking statements, which are things into the future, which we want or aspire to achieve in convincing somebody to invest or part with their money in the investment. The investors are also looking for proper investment opportunities. It's very important that in the journey together, there is absolutely the expectations of both are managed properly. I think if there's a divergence in the expectations, then it is likely to harm the enterprise more than anything else. Because I know of situations where we have been lucky, but I know of other institutions where this divergence in expectations actually led to the collapse of sometimes potentially good idea or something which should have made a big business. So managing expectations is very, very important. Oftentimes, there will be an Excel sheet that you made when you presented your business plan. and life is very different. Reality, when it strikes, it may not exactly follow the plan that you actually proposed first. Oftentimes, there could be imponderables, some challenges, and it's always good to muster up enough courage to disclose when something like that happened. The earlier you do that, rather than accumulating these small kind of issues and then later leading to major problems, mismanagement of expectations, better to, and always look at the vibes. Even an investor, it's not just the money that comes with the investor. The investor can also bring a lot of other things like connections. They can open doors, and all those things need to be discussed initially and then managed. And in that, I believe the documentation process is very, very important. Particularly scientists turned entrepreneurs, they tend to become impatient in looking at these legal documents and stuff like that. They are in a hurry to get the funds. So oftentimes, you don't spend enough time in going through the legalese. I know it's boring, but sometimes it's worth going through some of these documentations, which can be 100, 200 pages, whether it's the investment agreement or shareholders agreement. And many of these clauses from both sides, I think it lends itself to negotiation. And without breaking, without getting into deal breaker situations, it's important to actually negotiate and put your point of view firmly, but very politely and nicely. And that way, if you document the whole thing, there will not be any misunderstanding or anything later. But from a promoter's perspective, a few things that I would like to highlight. Of course, I know that there are VCs and other investors, potential investors also in the group. Few things one need to focus a little more carefully, whether there is a IRR, internal rate of return guarantee. I think that needs to be looked at very carefully. Oftentimes we discount the importance of such things because after a while, if this starts kicking in, then you may realize as a promoter that the effort that you are putting in is actually working for somebody else rather than yourself. So I don't say that this should be taken out, but you should have moderate levels of IRR. Liquidation preference is somewhere. I'm just randomly picking up some things which come to my mind. See, 1x liquidation preference is reasonable, but if somebody demands something more, that needs to be negotiated. Don't shy away from negotiation because it may take more time, or you may have to go deeper into the documentation. You should be very careful about the indemnification clauses. We should not, guarantee something which you can't fulfill, and so there's a promise. So certainly some personal guarantees, you need to really look at it. These kind of documentations will help in managing the expectations, and that will lead to synergies between or understanding between the investor and the investee, and make sure that the enterprise actually succeeds. We were lucky to have such investors. Sometimes the promoter gets into a desperate situation and then may be so desperate to get the funding that they don't really do the diligence. So when you don't go to that end, try to seek the funding when you still have some visibility for the next 24 or 12 months at least. And that's when one should do that. I think I'll stop now and try to come back to it if there's an opportunity.
Well, thank you very much. At least I'm picking up some of the words you use, the manage expectations and all that goes along with that. I think that's quite useful. And maybe with this, I will move on to the next person, Mr. Sanjeev Navagul. Your talk was very inspiring. It was very thought-provoking. And if I have to rephrase your sort of the talk that you gave in the morning, because some of them may have missed it, and in the bullet wise, some messages to the younger audience in the context of the power of team building, because you worked with Johnson & Johnson, so you must have seen a lot, like how do you handle complex teams, and then of course you're running your organization also, which might be fairly complex. So very briefly, in few minutes, if the message you have to give to the younger generation, how to think different, how to respect other people, not be afraid of failing, but you want to see, as your message was, in next 10, 20 years, we want to see our biotechs, our entrepreneurs competing at the world, not only in the Hyderabad, Bangalore, or the Pune section. You want to see they compete in the Boston, Bay Area, and what would be your messages in the bullet wise, in the short?
Yeah. So Dr. Arya, thank you for asking that question. And I've been to Taslim's place. I'm hoping to go to Premnath's place soon. I think I would pick up from what Premnath said is about 70s, we took over the generic medicine route. I'm no longer feeling proud of we being a large generic, supplier to the world, because we need to go up the value chain and we missed the bus in 70s, frankly. We should have gone ahead and build R&D capability at that time, which we did not. And we are still struggling with just copying medicines in chemistry. But we should not miss the cycle in biotech world. This is the cycle we should never miss and catch up with the world in terms of R&D. And exactly to where Dr. Arya you said is that there are a few pieces of advice for the team. First of all, whenever we are trying to build anything, we should look at it at a global scale. I'll tell you what my chief scientific officer, one of the most respected minds in the world on research, Dr. Paul Stoffel, said to me. He said to me once that, when you think of an idea, 100 people have thought along with you. Correct. The important thing is how do you make it workable, finish in time, and reach the market early. And that is something that people miss out, thinking there is a lot of time because I have an idea. Your idea translation, so translational science has to be much, much faster than what we think, that where the world moves very fast. The second is to build early connections with the world in the area of expertise that you're working on. What people do is sequentially start doing things, and then it hurts people that they don't have enough connections. They do not know the world, the industry they work in, the area that they work in, and that network is not established in time. So that is not to go sequential in this, actually work through that. Whenever you look for VC funding and all, it's not just about the money, but we should look at which VCs can give you better reach and actually connect you better to the outside world. This is missed by most people in the rush to get the funding round done. That is probably the third thing I would say. The fourth thing to me is never miss out on connectivity end to end, that you develop your product, but also look at where can you get commercialization done. Do you have the ability to commercialize yourself, or are you going to look for partners? If you're going to look for partners, are you going to find a global partner, India partner, stepwise partner, Asia partner? This kind of thinking has to go in very, very quickly into your plan, because otherwise what happens is that you start searching for partners towards the end, and then you start losing a lot of time. Maybe somebody else might come in the meantime. The last thing I would say is that choose mentors very carefully when you run your organization. I think Narayanan actually alluded very well to the legal aspects and the contract aspects. So when you look at mentors, don't try to, as I always say, don't try to have Hanumans around you, who are similar to you, or create the same kind of mentors. Create some different people around you who can give you different advice in different areas that might touch you in future. So if these are 4 or 5 things that you can take care of, most startups will be in a much better situation to succeed. And the last thing I would say is that the world is your market. Never think that your city is your market, your state is your market, your country is your market. Do not think that way. The world is really your market for great ideas. And we need to encourage people to think big in this.
Excellent. You touched upon 2 key points, one is the mentors. I think we talked less about that the power of having role models, the power of having mentors around our younger generation, and also think global. End of the day, the competition is much more on the bigger scale than the local competition. Thank you very much for sharing your very crisp points. And last but not the least, I will switch to Mr. Uday Chatterjee. I think I call Mr. Chatterjee is the missing link, because we as a scientist, we have to learn how to connect with the business world. And Mr. Uday, in your vast kind of career over the several decades, you must have gone enormous number of young entrepreneurs, some of the tough ones, some are not probably building the bridge or a marriage made between the scientists and the investors. If you have to look back of your kind of this, the journey of as an angel investor, and if you have to share some of your key messages to the young scientists aspiring to become entrepreneurs, what would be your take-home messages to the younger generation? How to do things differently from your experience that you've gone over the several decades, please?
Thank you. So I think I must tell you that before I became a sort of investor, I have spent considerable amount of time in the trenches being a serial entrepreneur. And so I have gone through the trial by fire over many, many years. And so what I speak is from experience on both sides. And so I will actually start first reiterating the message which Mr. Narayanan and Mr. Navagul both said, because that was the first point which I had noted, is to all young sort of entrepreneurs, especially in complex fields of science who are working in biotech, etc., they must choose their money from very carefully where it is coming, because I give 25% importance to the fund and 75% importance to the mentors that come with that money. So if a money comes just with no other sort of assistance attached, that is in my book, and I think that's what both Mr. Narayanan and Sanjeev and Navagul also referred to, would be worth much less. So as I think Professor Arya, you probably know that, I have with the companies that I'm sort of involved with as a mentor, and there are quite a few in the biotech field. My work starts with them at 5 o'clock in the morning and goes on till 11 in the night, and it happens almost 7 days a week. So we have very, very kind of deep involvement in what they're doing. And it's a sort of difficult minefield for a young entrepreneur who's a scientist, because scientist is very one-dimensional. For them to come and become multitasker and walk, these difficult paths is very, very difficult. So they do need somebody as a mentor who can handhold them and walk the kind of paths. So that's in my book the most important. Second, I would like to tell the sort of startups that sometimes, because all of you incubators have set up such wonderful sort of places. I've been to some of them, I've been to Aspire and all of that. So sometimes I find young scientists getting into a comfort zone there with some money coming in from BIRAC and so on. And they do not want to come out of that comfort zone into the real world, because till you come into the real world and start and think about monetizing what your science is, etc., you can tend to take a long time to kind of productize. So my advice to the young entrepreneurs would be that while you have to sort of have big dreams, follow solid science, and I would agree with all my previous speakers that we need to spend a lot more money on R&D, because what India has lacked. And I was just listening to Mr. Rahul Singhvi. If you know, he was the CEO of Novavax, and now he has another sort of great iconic company. So what he was saying is that we do need, as India, we do need to put really solid amount of money on R&D to become world leaders. So far our journey both in IT and then in various areas of medtech, etc., we have copied, and now we need to kind of make that next big jump, which is by producing novel products, doing drug discovery, etc. And for drug discovery and things like that, you have a much larger time frame to monetize. But Indian sort of VC fund environment is also maturing. I think a couple of years ago, it would be difficult for an Indian company to say that they will take 7 to 10 years before they can see the end of the road. And when you are in clinical trial, you don't even know whether you'll succeed or not. But we have now reached some amount of maturity, and we can find good amount of sort of funding even for companies who are in clinical trials. So I and Dr. Naganand, who was here earlier from Idea Spring, I means Indian Angel Network, but I happen to be the director on that particular company. We found enough money to fund a company which is in 3-phase clinical trial, and they're in the very first phase. So they still have probably 5 years to go. But so the Indian VC environment is also maturing. And if I may can add that, when the disciple is ready, the master appears. So I see that also happening. So right now, I get reached from funds abroad who are sort of focused on biotech, this thing. They're asking me to kind of identify for them people who have, are in clinical trial or in different sort of areas, regenerative medicine. Right now, I have 2 or 3 such people. They have come all the way from, US, Europe, etc., looking for, they're like scouts in a baseball game. They have to go around and see who are the good sort of players at college level, school level. So they're coming. So my sense is that the VC environment around biotech industry is maturing. And I have discussed this with Professor Arya before. I see the next phase of biotech industry in India will even kind of, will be one better than the IT industry's experience. So IT industry, they went from selling their this thing, body, and now they are some of the largest sort of companies in the world. And just for one small this thing, how big sometimes this confluence of different sciences, computer with biotech is happening. So I have a collaboration with one of my companies with Wipro. And Wipro has a biosciences division, which only works with some of the largest sort of biotech companies around the world, including with J&J in US and so on, with all the big companies. And that division alone has about 8,000 people and probably has more PhDs in biotech than most other sort of pure play biotech companies. So I think we are on a path to a very, very large sort of opportunity here. And I also see the world recognizing that, though it is in early stage, recognizing that potential, and they're already started to come and scout for those opportunities. I'll rest for a moment and then I'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chatterjee. I'm taking one word from you is the next big jump. I'm sure we're going to talk, in the coming days, months, and near future. We're going to talk more about this. We want to see the next big jumps from India. So I think we are almost running short of time. Jagdish, are you there?
Yes, Prabhat, yeah.
Do we have time for maybe 2 or 3 quick questions in just 5 minutes, 5-7 minutes?
Okay, okay.
Fit in?
Sure.
It's up to you. You tell us.
I
We
will.
take 2 questions from audience.
Dr. Arya, I need to leave because I have another dinner appointment. So, and I have to
Thank you
reach
very
that place. And with the traffic in Mumbai, I'm a little worried about that. So, if you don't mind, my extreme apologies to all the panelists also. But if you don't mind, I'll leave.
Thank you very much for your participation, Mr.
Thank you,
Sanjay.
sir. I will.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to have you. Yeah.
Jagdish, do you think we take maybe 2 questions from the audience, from the,
Okay, Prabhat. Yeah.
and then we finish in 5 minutes maybe? Huh?
Sure, sure. So, audience, if somebody wants to talk, you don't need to type. Just open your mics and speak up. No need to waste time in typing.
Yeah. Hi, Jagdish. Dr. Ravi here.
Hi, Ravi.
Yeah, from Pharmadem Solutions. So one of the very important thing which mentioned by Dr. Uday Chatterjee ji is that mentoring plays very important role in startups nurturing the money without mentoring. So we discussed about like how to get the money, VC capitals and all, but how to get the mentorship? Can someone help us in the process of getting the mentorship and avenues and the to reach to the good mentors and how you have to be cautious as well as picking up the mentor so that he will not engulf your company.
Would you like me to answer that?
Sure, sir.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So, Dr. Ravi, the early stage venture capital people are called angel investors. And I think there are quite a few angel investors. You just need to do some research, but I'm aware that we are very aware of what our responsibilities are, just like many people here, especially people like Dr. Redana, etc. They've spent all their life serving a cause with a missionary zeal. I also feel that what I do as an investor, it's with a missionary zeal. It's not just for a profit motive. We want to be, promoting ecosystem, and so there are many good sort of venture capital companies, angel investors for early seed round, and if you approach them and if they find your idea good, then they will certainly be once they take you on, that is a difficult part, but once they take you on, they will give everything they have to kind of walk with you across the kind of your path, your journey.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. This is a lovely note. Jagdish, can we take maybe last question?
Sure.
One last question. This is regarding the. Am I audible? I'm sorry, I'm traveling.
Please go ahead, sir. You are.
Yeah, okay.
Please go ahead.
Please go ahead.
This is regarding the in vivo in terms of the larger animals. There are very less facilities in India. And then, because once when you do it in 3 or 4 species, at least 2 or 3 species, we can cut down the cost on the clinical trials. Can someone have an insight into that, whereby you increase the facilities in larger animals like sheep, pig, goat? Thank you.
Excuse me, I think your question is sort of not relevant to this, the topic that we're discussing. Maybe you can contact me later on and we will try to understand your question and connect you to the right person or right resource.
Thank you.
There's one question in the chat, Prabhat. She wrote to me personally. What are sector-specific learnings from COVID experience? From Shashi M.
Yes, maybe who would like to take
Hello.
it?
Yeah.
Hello. Can I go for one question, sir?
Sure. The last one, please. Yeah.
So, actually, I am Dr. Vijayanand Pranigrai, founder of BioPioneer Private Limited. Basically, I am developing a protease inhibitor. So it is well-known molecule for everybody, those who are working in protein, basically, because of the very much important in antiviral drug. But we are not go in that detail because it will take a lot of clinical trial and all these things. For industrial purpose, those who are working in the protein isolation purpose, for that purpose we are developing. In that context, why means VC and the right channel partner is not I'm seeking actually. So how we'll connect to that particular
Yeah.
industry specific?
Excuse me, again, I think that's a very specific pitching question. This is not a pitching session. I think,
Uh,
you know,
yeah,
I'm
Dr.
expecting
Jagdish,
more general
maybe
question.
the previous question you had on COVID-19, if you
Yeah.
don't
Correct.
mind, I'll just add a couple of points.
Sure, sir.
Okay.
Please
Please go
take
ahead.
One of the things which we learned, so during COVID, one of the things which struck out was that wherever where we could act and do something was where we had created a pool of people, already, and a pool of capabilities. And a lot of credit goes to a lot of ecosystem building activities in the last 10-15 years, where at least there were a pool of people available. So BIRAC's efforts and all the other incubators which have created that pool were able to mobilize activity. So we saw this in Pune, we saw it in other places as well. And I think we should recognize the value of creating those capabilities. And they're like technology options for society. If we didn't have those, we would be nowhere in terms of being able to deliver any of the things that we did. Furthermore, even capacities of different kinds, including advanced facilities, are very important. For example, one of the key facilities which the National Biopharma Mission and BIRAC has supported in the Venture Center was actually at the back end of some early work done for Novavax, right? And this is something which, of course, Serum has talked about it openly, so I can talk about it. But the thing is, this is important. We need to do the kind of work, create those kind of capacities which allow us to act. And it's a cluster effect. Pune, there were many different things happening during COVID. And I can tell you that there was a considerable synergy that was leveraged. There was a cluster effect. There were efforts in vaccines. There were efforts in diagnostics. There were cross injections of investments. There were people working together. There was technical assistance, testing happening, a lot of PPE activities. One of the leading companies in ventilators was out of Pune. There were masks, there were face shields, there were so many things which we could bring to fore right there. And many players were acting together, including the government, including research labs, including incubators, including private companies, startups. We had sort of mobilized people in many different ways. And I think we could have done much better, of course. There's no, I'm not denying that. But that said, we were not helpless, right, as India. And we could also come up with interesting things, including good vaccines, an mRNA vaccine from India. Wow. I think that talks about what is possible from India. And I think that's something we should keep in mind. And COVID taught us a lot about how we should be building long-term capabilities and leveraging them and be ready when opportunity strikes. And I think that's what I would leave it at. Thank you.
So if I may just come in for 1 second, in continuation of with what Mr. Premnath said. So one of our companies called Nokark, I'm sure everybody is aware, Nokark was a company which was sort of in the IIT Kanpur incubation center and still finding their way, their go-to-market and all of that. And then COVID came. And there is a book written on it by Dr. Shrikant Shastri and Dr. Banerjee, that within a period of just about 90 days plus, from zero, they created a ventilator. They were able to get all the certifications and regulatory clearances, and they have installed several thousand ventilators of international standard quality across India, and most of it in private sector hospitals. So it was not like a charity from government. And this is now they have a big plant in Pune. And so it happened precisely for the reasons that Mr. Premnath mentioned, that, under emergency conditions, when everybody came on board and helped, that was the time when you could call BIRAC chief or the secretary biotechnology at 12 o'clock in the night, and they will take the call and they would push the button wherever it was required so that things didn't get held up. So yes, I think if we really, put it all together and have a resolve, we can do wonderful things.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chatterjee. So I think we are done with this session. I'd like to thank all the panel members. A big thank you to all for staying with us, and also thank you to the audience. And with this note, maybe I'll pass on to Jagdish. Would
Thank
you
you so
take
much,
over from
Prabhat.
here?
Yeah, great. So thank you all the panelists. It was amazing. I think the final take-home message, what I loved from Uday Chatterjee sir, is like pushing the button, right? So what buttons we push at what time. Great.
Sure.
So thank you, everyone.